Picture this. It's 1884, and European powers have gathered in Berlin around a giant map of Africa, ready to draw lines. No African leader was invited to that meeting, not one. They simply divided an entire continent over dinner and handshakes. That moment was called the Scramble for Africa, a frenzied race by colonial powers to control as much as possible. Now fast forward to today, same continent, a very different kind of scramble. And this time, the weapons are completely invisible. Instead of gunboats and colonial governors, the new tools are fiber-optic cables, 5G towers, data centers, and artificial intelligence. Sound familiar? To understand what's happening right now, we need to go back first. Because history, it turns out, has a way of rhyming. By 1914, European powers had carved up nearly 90% of Africa. Britain, France, Belgium, Portugal, all staking their claims with zero consent. What were they actually after? Land, yes. But more importantly, minerals, trade routes, forced labor, and political control. Sound familiar yet? Railways and ports weren't built to help African communities thrive. They were engineered to move resources out as fast as possible. Colonial infrastructure served one purpose: extraction. Get resources out efficiently, keep populations under control, and maximize profit for faraway capitals. Then came the independence movements of the mid-20th century. Country after country broke free from colonial rule. The flags finally changed. But here's what didn't change: the debt, the dependency on foreign technology, and the export-only infrastructure built during colonial times. Think about that. So when experts today say the new competition in Africa echoes colonialism, there's a reason that argument has such emotional weight. Okay, here's where things get genuinely interesting, because today's competition looks totally different on the surface, but maybe not underneath. Nobody is sending warships. Nobody is claiming colonies. The new Battleground runs through undersea cables and invisible wireless signals. Crazy, right? What's actually at stake today? Fiber-optic cables under the ocean, 5G tower networks, cloud servers, AI development platforms, submarine internet cables. Think about it this way: whoever controls the digital pipes controls what flows through them, and information is the new oil. Now hold on, why should you, sitting in America right now, even care about servers in Senegal or data cables in Kenya? Because this fight directly shapes where your electric car batteries come from, who controls AI supply chains, and what the internet looks like for everyone. Africa holds approximately 30% of the world's known critical minerals: cobalt, lithium, coltan, the stuff powering your phone and electric vehicle. And now, on top of minerals, there's a brand new prize: Africa's digital market. 1.5 billion people coming online at unprecedented speed. So yes, what happens in Nairobi and Addis Ababa absolutely matters to what happens in your daily life. Stay with me here. Let's talk about China. Because when it comes to Africa's digital transformation, China is not just present. China is dominant. We're not talking small investments. Huawei is building 5G networks. Alibaba is setting up cloud infrastructure. ZTE is laying communication cables everywhere. Chinese tech firms, Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent, what researchers call HAT, have become Africa's primary providers of next-generation digital technology. And China's key vehicle for all of this? The Digital Silk Road. Think of it as the tech version of the ancient trade routes. Under this initiative, China has invested an estimated $79 billion in digital infrastructure projects across approximately 80 countries worldwide. Let that sink in. Countries like Angola, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe alone received an estimated $8.4 billion in combined Chinese digital infrastructure investment. That's real money. Why do African governments keep saying yes to China? Because Beijing offers something Western nations often don't: money with far fewer political strings attached. No lectures about democracy or human rights. No lengthy environmental impact reviews. Just, here's the financing, here's the hardware, let's build it. In 2021, Senegal opened a brand new national data center. $18 million, funded with Chinese support and built by Huawei technology. Same year, Zimbabwe launched its own national data center, a $98 million project fully financed by China's Export-Import Bank. Pattern emerging here? Experts sum it up this way. For many African governments, Chinese-built internet infrastructure is genuinely better than having no internet infrastructure at all. It's a powerful argument, and it's why China's footprint across Africa's digital landscape keeps expanding, despite growing international concern and scrutiny. So, where is America in all this? Great question, and honestly, the answer is complicated. Maybe more complicated than you'd expect. US tech companies are in Africa, yes, but not in the same brick-and-mortar way. No Huawei-style hardware builds, no state-backed financing. Instead, Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft extract enormous value through data-driven business models that are invisible but incredibly profitable. Sound uncomfortable? It should. Every Google search, every Facebook scroll, every Amazon click in Africa generates data. That data flows back to American servers and fuels American AI. Researchers call this surveillance capitalism, the extraction of value from human digital behavior at massive continental scale. Not exactly a gift to Africa. So while China builds the digital pipes, America profits from what flows through them. Two very different flavors of power and influence over Africa. Europe takes a third entirely different approach: regulation. The EU's GDPR privacy rules have become the template spreading across Africa's own legal landscape. By early 2023, 36 out of Africa's 54 nations had adopted data protection laws. The majority were explicitly modeled after European GDPR principles. So here's the picture. China uses hardware. America uses platforms. Europe uses legal rules. Africa is caught navigating all three at once. Okay, now we get to the part that might genuinely make you put down your phone for a moment. Ready? Because alongside all the infrastructure deals and financing agreements, there's a much darker story quietly playing out across the continent right now. Smart city technology, facial recognition cameras, AI-powered urban surveillance systems. China is exporting all of it to African governments right now. 9 African countries, including Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, and Zambia, now operate Chinese-backed smart city surveillance systems in their major cities. These systems can track individual movements in real time, monitor communications, and identify faces in crowds. The technology is genuinely extraordinary and terrifying. And some African governments, in Ethiopia, Uganda, and Zambia, have reportedly used these precise tools to surveil and suppress political opponents. But here's the crucial twist, and this is really important. China isn't always forcing these surveillance tools on unwilling governments. Not at all. In many cases, African governments are actively and proactively seeking these surveillance technologies out. The demand is homegrown. The authoritarianism has local architects. Now, let me tell you about the African Union headquarters story, because this one is genuinely wild. Ready to hear this? In 2012, China built and gifted the entire African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. $200 million. Called it a symbol of friendship. Then in 2017, a computer scientist noticed something strange. AU servers were silently sending data to Shanghai every single night for 5 full years, and in Kenya, Chinese hackers reportedly infiltrated 8 government ministries between 2019 and 2022, apparently targeting documents about Kenya's debt repayment strategies to China. China denied everything. Kenya dismissed the reporting as propaganda, but independent cybersecurity firms confirmed the digital intrusion signatures matched Chinese state-linked hacking groups. Here's the question that haunts security experts at night. Who actually controls that digital infrastructure when a real crisis or conflict breaks out? Okay, I need you to stop here for a second, because I've been making Africa sound completely helpless, and that's not the real story. Because here's what's genuinely different this time. Africa in 2025 is not the Africa of 1884. Not even close, not remotely. Africa today has 54 seats in the United Nations, and recent history shows African nations are increasingly willing to use that collective voice. Remember when several African nations refused to vote for UN sanctions against Russia over Ukraine? That wasn't random. That was calculated strategic leverage in action. Africa now holds the world's youngest and fastest growing population, its fastest growing consumer market, and irreplaceable critical mineral reserves. That combination is genuine power. And smart African leaders are beginning to play the United States and China against each other, deliberately extracting better deals and concessions from both sides. Think of Singapore's Playbook, a small nation that maximizes its strategic position by carefully calculating every policy move against the interests of major powers. Rwanda is building its own tech ecosystem. Kenya hosts one of Africa's most vibrant startup scenes. Nigeria has more software developers than many European nations. Brookings Institution researchers put it this way: the renewed global scramble for Africa can actually become a massive opportunity, if managed strategically enough. This time around, Africa isn't simply a battleground. It's becoming an active player, complex, ambitious, and increasingly aware of its own enormous leverage. And that brings us to the real prize. The thing everyone in this story is actually fighting over. It's called digital sovereignty. What is digital sovereignty? Simply put, the right of a nation to control its own data, its own networks, and its own digital future. Here's a simple question to illustrate it. If your country's government stores sensitive data on foreign-owned servers, who is really running your government? The African Union has a concrete plan for this challenge. It's called the Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa, a comprehensive 2020 to 2030 roadmap. The goal? Build a unified digital single market across all 54 African nations. Make Africa a producer of technology, not merely a passive consumer. By 2030, the strategy aims for every single African citizen to have affordable internet access, a verified digital identity, and locally hosted digital services. But despite 17% of the global population, Africa today accounts for just 1% of the world's data center capacity. That gap is enormous. Here's the key academic insight. Technology itself is fundamentally neutral. What matters is not who supplies it, but who governs and regulates it. Former empires drew political borders with ink on paper maps. Today's empires draw network architectures with fiber-optic cable and lines of software code. Sovereignty used to mean controlling territory. Now it also means, where is your data stored, under whose laws, and who can shut it down? So here's where we land. Africa is back at the center of great power competition. But this time, the contest is fundamentally digital. The fiber cables, the data centers, the surveillance systems, the AI platforms, this is the new colonial infrastructure of the 21st century. China builds the hardware, America monetizes the platforms, Europe exports the legal frameworks, and Africa is navigating all three of these simultaneously, every single day. But here's what's genuinely different from 1884. Africa has real agency now. Africa has real leverage. Africa has a voice, and it keeps growing. The minerals powering your phone, the AI systems running your apps, the digital rules shaping the global internet. Africa is central to all of it. Whether African nations can convert that centrality into genuine, lasting sovereignty, that might be the biggest geopolitical story of the entire next decade. So next time someone mentions AI, electric vehicles, or great power competition, remember, the real game is being played on the African continent right now. That's a wrap for today. If the old Scramble drew Africa's borders with ink, the new Scramble is drawing Africa's digital future with code. The question is, who gets to hold the pen?